The diplomatic quarters of Station Nexus 7 had seen countless species pass through its corridors, but none quite like the cub cats. They were small, feline-like creatures from the Kepler Belt colonies, barely reaching knee-height on most humanoids, with luminescent stripes that pulsed in rhythmic patterns across their russet fur. Their planet had been destroyed 3 cycles ago in a supernova event, and the survivors had been scattered across the galaxy, seeking refuge wherever they could find it. Elena Reyes walked through the station's main concourse with her usual confident stride, her worn leather jacket bearing the insignia of the Terran Expeditionary Corps. Behind her, a procession of 17 cub cats moved in perfect synchronization, their bioluminescent markings glowing in unified waves of amber and violet. Station security personnel had learned to clear a path when they saw her coming. "Dr. Reyes, Security Chief," Vex Thor called out, his triple-jointed arms gesturing with obvious frustration. The Krillian officer had stopped her at least 5 times this week. "We need to discuss this situation." Elena paused, turning to face him with a patient smile. The cub cats immediately arranged themselves in a semicircle around her feet, their large eyes fixed on the security chief with an intensity that made him visibly uncomfortable. "What situation would that be, Chief?" "The creatures," Vex Thor gestured at the cub cats. "Station regulations clearly state that refugee fauna must remain in designated habitation zones. These animals have been following you everywhere for the past 2 weeks. The Council is receiving complaints." "Complaints from whom?" Elena crossed her arms. "The cub cats aren't violating any sentience protocols. They're not pets, Chief. They're sovereign beings." "Sovereign?" Vex Thor's translucent membranes fluttered in confusion. "They're animals. Adorable. Yes, but animals nonetheless. And they follow you, like you're their master." One of the cub cats, a particularly small one with distinctive white markings on his face, stepped forward. His name was Taro, and Elena had come to recognize him as something of a spokesperson among his people. The creature's bioluminescence shifted to a deep blue, and he released a series of melodic chirps and trills. "They don't follow," Elena said quietly, her eyes never leaving the security chief. "They elect." Vex Thor's confusion deepened. "Elect? I don't understand." Elena knelt down, bringing herself to eye level with Taro. The small creature reached out with one paw, placing it gently on her knee. The other cub cats began to glow brighter, their patterns synchronizing into waves that rippled through the group like a luminous heartbeat. 3 weeks ago," Elena began, "I was assigned to review the cub cat refugee applications. Every other species representative on this station denied them. The Krillians said they lacked sufficient intelligence. The Mordathi claimed they had no culture worth preserving. The Xendu simply called them space vermin." Vex Thor shifted uncomfortably. "The evaluations followed standard protocol. The evaluations were wrong." Elena interrupted, her voice sharp. "Do you know what humanity learned after centuries of underestimating other species on our own planet? That intelligence comes in forms we don't always recognize. That communication isn't always verbal. That consciousness itself is more diverse than we ever imagined." She stood, and Taro climbed up her leg to perch on her shoulder, his small claws gripping her jacket with practiced ease. "I spent 3 days with the cub cats in their holding area," Elena continued. "I watched them, I listened, and I realized something that every other species on this station was too arrogant to see. The bioluminescence isn't just pretty lights, Chief. It's language, complex, nuanced, and sophisticated." Taro's markings pulsed in a rapid sequence, and the other cub cats responded in kind, their collective glow creating patterns that seemed to dance through the air. "I started learning it," Elena said. "And they started teaching me. And do you know what the first thing they told me was? They asked if I would speak for them, not because they couldn't speak for themselves, but because none of the other species would listen to them. They needed someone with a voice the Council would hear. So they chose you," Vex Thor said slowly. "They elected me," Elena corrected. It's a fundamental aspect of their society. When they face a crisis, they don't follow leaders blindly. They observe, they deliberate, and they choose representatives through consensus. Every single one of these cubcats voted. The decision was unanimous. Vex Thor looked at the assembled cubcats with new eyes. Elena smiled. Because last week, when I proposed a solution to the council that they disagreed with, they voted to elect someone else temporarily. A cubcat named Nira worked with Ambassador Tolmesh of the Dendari for 3 days until I adjusted my approach. Then, they voted me back. Does that sound like mindless following to you? The security chief was silent for a long moment. Finally, he spoke. If what you're saying is true, this changes everything. They would qualify for sentient status under Galactic Charter. It is true, Elena said. And I've spent the last 2 weeks documenting everything. Their language, their social structures, their decision-making processes. Humanity has learned to look for intelligence in unexpected places, Chief. We evolved alongside creatures that used echolocation, bioluminescence, and chemical signals to communicate. We learned humility when we discovered dolphins had names for each other. When we found that octopi could solve problems we couldn't. We learned that intelligence doesn't always look like us. Taro chirped softly, his pattern shifting to warm golden hues. Elena reached up to gently stroke his head. The other species in the Galactic Council come from worlds where they were apex predators, where dominance hierarchies were everything, she continued. They see leadership as command, as control. But humans? We learned leadership from wolves that vote with their feet, from bees that dance their opinions, from prairie dogs that have words for different types of danger. We learned that democracy isn't a human invention. It's a universal principle that emerges wherever consciousness gathers. Vexus Thor looked at the cubcats, really looked at them, and perhaps for the first time, saw beyond the cute exterior to the intelligence within. The creature's bioluminescent patterns had synchronized into a slow, steady rhythm that seemed almost like a collective breath. What do you need from me, Dr. Reyes? Clear them for full station access, Elena said, and schedule an emergency session with the council. It's time the cubcats had their voices heard. Consider it done. Vex Thor gave a formal bow, not to Elena, but to the assembled cubcats. Several of them returned the gesture in their own way, their front paws touching their chests as their markings flashed in acknowledgement. As the security chief walked away, Elena felt Taro's small body relax on her shoulder. His purr-like vibration was barely audible, but she'd learned to recognize it as satisfaction. Ready for the council meeting tomorrow? She asked him quietly. Taro's response was a complex pattern of lights that she'd learned meant, roughly, democracy is not a human word. It is a universal truth. Tomorrow, they will understand. Elena smiled. Humanity had spent centuries searching for intelligent life among the stars, never imagining that one of the greatest lessons they'd teach the galaxy was one they'd learned from the smallest creatures on Earth. That being heard isn't about being loudest, and being followed isn't about command. Sometimes, the greatest leaders are those who are chosen, not those who choose to lead. And sometimes, the smallest voices carry the most important messages. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn what the cubcats and humanity had always known, that democracy doesn't follow, it elects.